I wasn't exaggerating when I said that I received in the mail a Trump 2028 hat from one of his biggest supporters. These guys are not screwing around.
So it is certainly not a secret that Gavin Newsom is running for president in 2028 and is currently trying to use the California redistricting special election as the launch pad to do so. Except there's just a few problems with this strategy that we are currently seeing. First and foremost, there still remain open questions as to whether or not his current effort to gerrymander California will actually succeed. And obviously, if it does, that'll be some political boost. It'll be a piece of momentum for him. But if it doesn't, it's worth remembering here, guys, that this is not a small issue. This is something he has hitched his entire political brand on, this idea that he's going to fight back directly, take the fight to Texas, Trump, and the Republicans on this redistricting issue. So ultimately, if he fails, that is not just a minor egg on his face. That is a total and complete disaster and humiliation. Granted, given the state of the rest of the Democratic field, he might succeed ultimately in the end in winning the nomination, but still not exactly something that inspires confidence, first of all. Secondly, however, I think it's also a relevant question as to where does Gavin Newsom actually stand with the wider American public? Because if you believe the online hype and maybe that on TV as well, of course, over the weekend, we saw a massive surge in praise for Gavin Newsom as the future of the Democrat Party from Democrat influencers, almost all coming out at once. And I'm like, gee, I really wonder who is astroturfing that. But outside of the online bubble and outside of the political establishment Democrat consultant class, where does his popularity and favorability actually stand? Well, as we'll show you in today's video, recent polling in this regard has not actually spelled good news for Democrats, and the situation may start to get worse because, of course, he has been kind of leading thus far. You're already seeing the framework of what he wants to do, of the supposed California prosperity. We're so amazing as the pretense to why he should be the president. Now, us conservatives obviously know he is completely full of it. Many Californians also know. The question is, nationwide, how much will he be able to gaslight and hide it like a complete political sociopath, which he ultimately is? However, when you look to the current state of California, constantly hearing the Gavin Newsom bragging points about how we have the best economy, we have the biggest GDP, a lot of that is already rapidly starting to become undone, as is the case with many sanctuary cities and states at the moment who are facing massive layoffs, budgetary and financial shortfalls and the such. Because, big surprise here, I know nobody could see this coming, but after the Joe Biden stimulus money, which was giving California like a budget surplus back in 2023, and we're doing so amazing, is now beginning to dry up. Yeah, guess what? The problems with liberal policies, liberal economics, all of these things are starting to be exposed. So the situation here, guys, only getting worse. That said, in today's video, I want to break down all of these themes. First of all, where is that redistricting effort actually going? And secondly, of course, where does Gavin Newsom stand nationally? And is the situation going to get better or worse for him? We'll break all of that down. First, though, do us a favor. As usual, if you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing is not only the best way to support our videos, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. We're almost at 500K. Help us get there. Smash that red button. And with that said, I think, first of all, it has been basically a foregone conclusion that, hey, if Texas is going to redo its congressional maps, so can California. Except, as we've been trying to tell you for a long time, ever since the beginning of this battle, in the case of Gavin Newsom, it's not exactly that easy because he will have to go around or somehow abolish the California Independent Redistricting Commission, which, by the way, is not even all that independent. It's already massively corrupt and controlled by Democrats, hence why California is already a state that is a silent gerrymander, is what they call it. But before we continue this video, a quick word from today's sponsors, because we need to talk about the financial mess that is hitting Americans hard. It is arguably the most important story in this country and it never gets talked about, which is the fact that we are currently in a record-breaking personal debt crisis. In Q2, total household debt hit just $18.39 trillion. That's about half of our entire national debt. Credit card debt debt has skyrocketed to $1.3 trillion. Some folks are juggling 25% interest rates, and Gen Z, my generation, don't even speak about it. We're currently in an average personal debt of $94,000, which is way above what had even millennials and Gen X dealing with. Guys, the system is not just broken, it's rigged. Big banks profit when you're desperate, and creditors win when you're stuck, but you don't have to play their game. PDS Debt is here to help you take back control. They've helped hundreds of thousands break free from credit cards, loans, and high interest traps. It's your money, your future, and it's time to fight for both. Here's why PDS Debt stands out. They go beyond the numbers, diving into your unique financial situation to craft a personalized plan just for you. No minimum credit score, no problem. They're focused on helping you save more, pay debt off faster, and keep your hard-earned cash in your pocket. And they're legit. PDS Debt is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau with thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. You can go read them for yourself, of course. Always verify what we're telling you here. And that's because they've helped countless people like you get out of debt. Guys, judging by the statistics, someone out there watching this video probably applies here to you. So, full transparency, if I ever needed a service like this, and God forbid, PDS Debt is absolutely what I would use. They're the real deal. So you're now just 30 seconds away from starting your journey to being debt-free. Head over to pdsdebt.com/Vince for your free assessment and find the best option for you right now. That's pdsdebt.com/Vince. Don't wait. Take control of your financial life, your future, and frankly, your livelihood today. But nonetheless, in order to do the plan here of adding 5 Democrat seats, he will have to somehow abolish that. And considering it was a ballot proposition with the voters, the only solution here will be a special election, which he has, of course, called. He's planning that for this November. And again, probably a foregone conclusion, oh, it's a blue state, they'll go along with it. Except the recent polling on this regard does not exactly agree. As you can see here, a new Politico poll conducted just over the weekend shows that California voters prefer keeping the Independent Redistricting Commission to determine the state's House seats by a nearly 2-to-1 margin here, guys. 64% support keeping the commission in place, while only 36% of respondents said they want to abolish it. This, by the way, guys, if you read the crosstabs of the poll, includes 61% of Democrat voters in the state want to keep the independent commission they already voted to establish in place. Needless to say, not very good news for Newsom. However, I would also argue that I do not think Republicans should be arrogant about this at all whatsoever. Given that I'm from California, I know exactly how this works. All they need to do, first of all, is pump a few $1 million into TV ads saying, hey, vote yes on this proposition, Donald Trump opposes it, and just say Donald Trump, and you'll probably get this number to change. However, still, 64-36, that is a huge hill to climb out of in just a couple of months. The election will be in November. It is already almost September. Can you sway public opinion heavily enough in that short time period? I would also say to the Republican Party of my home state that this is the battle you need to fight, and that's a legal one with the Secretary of State. What do I mean by that? Because this is an exact story we see in California all the time. I think back, for instance, to the 2018 midterms and the ballot proposition that year to abolish California's insanely high gas tax. And you know what happened there? Was who was at the time Secretary of State in California, Alex Padilla, now infamously the senator who got manhandled by the DHS and FBI agents, rewrote the language of the proposition to, again, abolish the gas tax, to instead basically say, cut funding for infrastructure. That's what it said, right? This proposition will cut the funding for infrastructure and the roads and the highways, and the voters voted against it because they said to themselves, oh, who wants to cut infrastructure funding? Not, you read through, you could see it, but again, very manipulatively worded. We need to make sure, whether you got to take it to court or whatever, they're not allowed to do that. Make it explicit. No, we're going to abolish the Independent Redistricting Commission and allow for partisan redrawing of congressional maps. That's what it is. That's the phraseology and the language you have to put on this ballot. But nonetheless, thus far, it is looking pretty good in terms of, our battle to actually stop this from happening. Who knows? It's an open question what will ultimately happen in November, right?
Woman on the panel.
Let me summarize Gavin Newsom's speech today. Gerrymandering is evil. Please vote for my gerrymandering. Of course, he failed to mention that it's already gerrymandered. Republicans get 40% of the vote in California. They have 17% of the congressional seats under a supposed independent redistricting commission. So we're going to further gerrymander the gerrymandering
by that
Texas
standard.
to act in the first place.
Standard,
42% of the state voted for Donald Trump in the last election. Now you have Governor Gavin Newsom trying to challenge that. He's not working for Californians. He is not doing what they want. He's working for the DNC because he's got to deliver the 5 seats that Governor Abbott in Texas is going to redistrict and redraw out of Texas. Now that's 5 for 5. What Gavin Newsom is very, very worried about is not the 5 seats, but the 13 to 15 seats that that Republicans will now redraw in Kansas, in Kentucky, in my state, in Florida. We're trying to get another 3 to 4 seats by doing the same game that Democrats have been doing all along. We just haven't been playing this game, but we're finally getting there. Ultimately, 2026, that's what Gavin Newsom's worried about. He's going to try to deliver what he can, what he has jurisdiction over in California to deliver 5 seats. It's going to be the redistricting arms race is what we're calling it here. But ultimately, 2026, it's going to be a hard fight for Democrats. They're going to try, but we're going to try harder.
Yeah, well, as I've been saying, I'm not exactly that scared of Gavin Newsom's little retaliation attempt, because if this comes down to, as they call it there, an arms race, or as I might say, mutually assured destruction, that is a situation mathematically that Republicans would beat Democrats in. Because newsflash, we have more states across this country. There's more red states than blue states. And we also have more room to grow, right? When it comes to post-2020 redrawing of maps, when you really break it down, as we've been telling you, the Democrats have already largely reached their ceiling, or very close to their ceiling, on gerrymandering. It's the Republicans who drew their maps way too quote-unquote fair and have a lot of room to go nationwide in many different states. And, you know, obviously Newsom is kind of opening here the wrong can of worms, and that could be another way in which this all backfires, even if it does succeed. But nonetheless, we're not mainly here today to talk about nationwide redistricting. We're here to talk about California's redistricting and Newsom in particular. So that said, it's also worth noting that the current estimate for the cost of this special election to hold is going to be about $250 million. That's right, $250 million to hold one election on one issue. Which I really have to ask the question first and foremost. How is that even possible? You know, that it's that expensive? But nonetheless, okay, you know, obviously it's money, whatever. It just kind of appears to us as lines on a graph, and we just say the number and we move on. But that is not the case for California, actually. Because when you look at the current state of their budget, and it's interesting because I remember just 2 to 3 years ago, Newsom, because of COVID money, it was very misleading, was touting California's massive budget surplus, that the state is currently in a $20 billion budget crisis. So at a time where the state's going bankrupt and potentially might have to look at a federal bailout, Trump don't do it, or emergency loans or something, hey, let's just go spend $250 million more on a special election, right? But of course, that greatly summarizes the spending patterns of California. This is a big theme. Just a couple of months ago, it was a $12 billion deficit they're dealing with. And this all comes largely to a number of reasons. You could imagine California is spending money like crazy. But on top of that, worth noting, a big contributor, this is very underrated, of that very budget crisis is the fact that they keep on trying to give Medicaid benefits to illegal aliens, which I know, newsflash guys, is bankrupting their sanctuary state. And, well, you know, this is going to be a hard thing to argue against when you're running for President Newsom, but take a listen.
We were off. We were significantly off.
On Wednesday, Governor Gavin Newsom admitted the state was wrong when he initially predicted back in January the state would have a $363 million surplus in the state budget. Newsom is now blaming the Trump administration's actions for the lack of incoming revenue, calling it a, quote, Trump slump.
We're going to see an impact about a $16 billion downturn, not all in the next fiscal year, but fiscal year +1.
Governor Newsom says the state is now facing an $11.9 billion deficit with a $321.9 billion budget and $15.7 billion in reserves. The governor's office wants to do several things, including using billions from the state's rainy day fund and even negotiating state workers' pay.
The intent is really to avoid increased costs in the upcoming fiscal year, and it's not to implement furloughs or PLPs or those type of things.
The governor is also proposing changes to Medi-Cal.
$5 billion on a freeze on our Medi-Cal expansion. We're not cutting or rolling back those that are enrolled.
This would apply to those receiving Medi-Cal regardless of immigration status. The governor is proposing a $100 premium for undocumented immigrants, and the freeze would apply to new adult applicants older than 19.
We're just capping it, particularly for those without documentation.
In response, Republican lawmakers say the state cannot continue to provide Medi-Cal services to people without documentation.
We just simply can't afford it. And he's acknowledging that by this budget's adjustment. And in future budgets, I think we're going to see more.
You know, this is just such an underrated video on many fronts. First and foremost, he blames Donald Trump for the reason why his state is now in a massive budget deficit, as are many other Democrats nationwide, because again, this budget issue is a big problem. It's in Colorado right now, Chicago, Illinois. Many Democrat cities and states are facing this issue. But no, guys, it has nothing to do with Trump, okay? By the way, the fiscal year that came in to your states this year was from last year's tax revenue during Joe Biden. No, I'll tell you the exact problem, and this is well documented, by the way, is that when the COVID stimulus money came in, all these liberal states were like, yay, free money. They just kept spending it. They opened all these new programs. As you can see, Newsom is giving all this Medi-Cal to illegal aliens, which we'll talk about here in a second. And then magically, right, because they just had so little foresight, they couldn't see this coming, that when the COVID money dries up, what happens? Well, they no longer have the money to fund all these programs, but programs are popular, people like them, and so now you can't get rid of them even though you can't afford them. And then guess what? You're now in a $12 billion budget deficit. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has everything to do with you, first of all. Secondly, I love the, all the meltdown over the big, beautiful bill, which of course, one of the major propositions it made was to no longer allow Medicaid benefits to go to non-citizens and illegal aliens. And yet Gavin Newsom quietly is doing the same thing, right? Because he doesn't even have the money. But they're taking healthcare from people. Hey, Gavin, who's taking healthcare from people, huh? Why are you taking healthcare from your undocumented immigrants who are part of your communities and they really need it, huh, Gavin? That's irony number 2. Irony number 3, as he currently talks about how he's going to have to cut his beloved Medi-Cal, which is the state form of Medicaid in California, and potentially cut salaries for workers and furlough them and all that stuff, that it turns out the supposed amazing leadership of the Golden State, California prosperity, we're the best. All the Republicans are just lying about how California is doing. It's actually doing amazingly. That narrative is coming completely undone. And it's not just an issue of a budget deficit. We have the reporting here that California now for the second month in a row leads the nation for the highest unemployment rate in America. Highest one. Our economy is so amazing. Have you seen our GDP? All these poor red states who are all just these backwards, impoverished rednecks. They don't know what they're talking about. Oh, there you go. Highest unemployment rate, 2 months in a row. Okay. Alaska has a higher unemployment rate than a lower unemployment rate, I should say, than California. Turns out you're not doing so well. The state is already in an economic and financial crisis, but it's only going to get worse. And you can try to manipulate something like the affordability statistics, even though it's a well-known fact about California. This is not something Newsom's going to easily run from. He can blame Trump all he wants, but I don't think it's necessarily going to stand. So all of that said, this is already a problem that's going to come up when he runs for president. But how is Newsom currently doing among Americans? Because again, as I said, if you listen to online Democratic chatter, he's the talk of the town. He's got it. He's super popular. He's amazing. He's good looking. Look at him, right? But a Gallup poll conducted at the end of last month, this is the most recent polling we have on Newsom, seems to disagree, as you can see. Gavin Newsom favorability conducted at the end of July. Favorable, 30%, unfavorable, 41%. He is 11 points underwater in terms of his favorability. It's worth noting as well that the breakdown, as you probably expect, comes along gender lines. Females have a +2 favorability for Gavin Newsom, right? They like him by a slim margin. But among men, he has a -25% unfavorability rating, right? And the men absolutely despise him, which, given the election results, the trends we've seen, it's not surprising. The boys always have to come save the day and save the country as usual. But all kidding aside here, what an atrocious poll. And I'll tell you 2 reasons why it's atrocious. First of all, the math, obviously. It just makes sense. He's 41% unfavorable. Look at even among women, only +2. Obviously, mathematically does not counterbalance a -25 unfavorable with men. But I'd also like to note that this poll also shows that Gavin Newsom is already well known across this country, right? When you add up that total, 71% of Americans have an opinion on Newsom. Right, because it'd be one thing, right? Part of the reason, for instance, you saw after the 2024 election that Kamala Harris was leading in the front-running position was because she had the highest name recognition. But Gavin Newsom cannot make that excuse. 71% of Americans already know enough about him to have an opinion, and they despise and resent him that much. What does that mean? That means, first of all, there's probably people, the information is getting out better than maybe they're hoping it doesn't, about California and what a nightmare it is. I don't know. That's what this poll would suggest. Or even when he just puts himself on TV, people see through the fakeness, right? The sociopathy, just like they did for Kamala Harris. Newsom is polished. He does a much better job of hiding it. But ultimately inside, right, he is literally a sociopath. That seems to be what this would suggest. So very interesting there on that front. It's worth noting as well, we've seen this very phenomenon in real life. Again, the question of outside of the Democrat bubble, how popular is Newsom? Well, it's worth noting just in the month of July, you may remember, he went on a campaign tour. He was campaigning in South Carolina, which is the first primary state for Democrats. And, taking a look at the people in attendance, it's hard to say this guy has widespread appeal outside of the nursing home that the Democrat Party is already operating in. Just saying.
Your state, and it's been an extraordinary day. And my state of mind is filled with gratitude and appreciation, particularly for all of you showing up tonight. I mean, this was a last minute thing. And they said, we'll just throw it together, but don't, we're in some rural parts of South Carolina, so don't expect many people. So you guys obviously didn't get that memo. So.
And guys, this is all why I say that Gavin Newsom, first of all, still is not someone who should be underestimated or taken for granted. He definitely is the best candidate that Democrats have probably right now, right? Maybe the looks thing will go far for him. He's a sociopath. That's dangerous because it means he'll stoop to any level to get what he wants. That's all true. But at the same time, it's also completely possible and arguably even plausible that the Democrat Party is currently walking into the same exact trap they walked into back in 2024, which is essentially to say that, trust our political consultants. They know what they're doing. Kamala Harris is super popular. Look at these crowds of geriatrics we've turned out. Tim Walz, he's such a relatable little dad. Oh my, he's such the best guy ever. Totally relatable. Everyone has been friends with school shooters, apparently, according to Tim Walz, right? But when it got to the election, that was not the case. Because outside of the Democrat bubble, all of the warning signs were there. Kamala Harris was unpopular. Her policies were unpopular. The administration she represented was unpopular. But we had big crowds. We were able to astroturf this support. Freedom, freedom. Remember that song, right? Well, it's all so well put together. As Joy Reid infamously said, Queen Latifah endorsed her. That should be it. And that turns out that's not how the country works. It's entirely possible that even if Newsom's a better communicator, he is much better than Kamala. That's true. Better optics than Kamala. That's also true. All of that. Still, at the end of the day, Democrats, when you take off the veneer of the imagery, are running the same candidate. Right? You have a totally sociopathic, power-hungry lunatic who everywhere he has served in office has been an abject failure, and people find that out in some way or another, right? He has a very radical past. Kamala Harris in 2020 ran a very crazy progressive campaign. Gavin Newsom has been a crazy progressive governor until 2 seconds ago where he's claiming he wasn't. This stuff can come out, right? And just because you put lipstick on a pig doesn't change the pig that's inside, which is ultimately, I think, the same here. So all of that said, guys, we'll be keeping an eye on Newsom as usual, but just some early thoughts. His polling's not doing well. California is facing more problems right now, not less. You can fully expect, by the way, he's going to try to clean up the state in the next 2 years, suddenly attempt to be a good governor because he wants to run for president. But will he succeed in that? Doesn't seem so, right? And by the way, will he actually pursue really doing real change to get California a little bit better before he leaves? Or will he be so consumed, as many Democrats are, on the fight against Donald Trump, he loses sight of the fact that, figuratively and in some cases literally, there's a fire burning beneath you, that you need to take care of, you need to put out. So there you have it. That said, guys, let me know your thoughts on all of this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.